Hi, Ali. Hi, Vid. And Aden. Do a little sound check to make sure you can hear me okay. Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Ali, especially you? Good. Ali, I just wanted to make sure that you have the controls to take the screen and screen share. Can you just confirm that for me? You should have a presenter permission. Just make sure. Okay, we've got a couple minutes before we get started, but Ali, I'd like to do a quick check with you to make sure that we can that you can present with no problem. Let me know if you can hear me. Hi, everybody that's just joined. We're going to give it a couple more minutes. We did have a substantial number of people register. It's very exciting. So we'll just give a couple more minutes for those folks to join. On standby. So hello everyone who's just joining. As more people start to join, I'll just take advantage of this first few minutes to introduce myself in case you don't know me. My name is Robert McTavish. I'm the lead for the Primero work, and I am very, very happy to see so many people registering and engaging on this very central issue, which is around data use. As people are joining, because I do realize that some of you were not able to join the first edition, the Q1 edition of our data challenge, I will take the microsite link here and just paste that into the chat, give you a minute or two to look at that in case you haven't seen this before. These are the materials and the content from our first data challenge. This is our Q2 data challenge. We do anticipate to continue with this. So while we wait for more folks to join, just take a look at that link, and we'll get started in 2 more minutes. We'll give people. And you can see here on the link that there's a recording, but also the slides, and you can just hover over and scroll through these slides. We've got some key learnings, some key takeaways, and importantly, this guidance document for using the Primero API. So while we're waiting for people to join, I suggest you just take a look at those things, and we'll start in 2 minutes. And Ali, again, just checking to make sure that you see the screen sharing option as a presenter. Ali, if you're hearing me, I know you've logged in as a guest, but you should be registered as a presenter, so just confirm that for me if you can. Okay, I'm getting lots of messages. Ali, you have your hand up. This is interesting. You should be able.
Yeah. Hi. Can you
Yeah,
hear me now, Robert?
I do.
Yeah. So the thing is, the options are disabled for me, Robert. And just when I raised my hand, the mic option got enabled somehow. But the camera and
I
the share option are still disabled for me.
okay. That's a Teams thing. You know, you're a presenter and a contributor on the webinar, so you should have all those permissions. How about now? You should have.
Yeah, now I can see the camera, the mic as well. They are both enabled, but the sharing option says that only meeting organizers and presenters can share.
Okay, well, you are a meeting organizer. You're set up as a speaker, so you don't have a separate email address, do you, Ali?
No, it's the same one. So, well, let me try another. Let me try something else in like
Okay.
30 seconds.
Okay. Well, that would be a challenge for us. He's one of our main presenters today. So, okay, I'm going to get underway with the introductions. There we go. Why is he signing in as a guest? I don't understand why you're coming in as a guest, Ali. Should be, here I go, make you a presenter. Okay, well, let's get underway. We don't want to waste anybody's time this morning. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin this session, our Q2 session of the Primero Data Challenge, by quickly sharing some information. 1 second, please. Ali, there you are again.
Yeah, I'm ready. I can see the option right now. Everything is good. So
Okay, wonderful. I'm going to start with the introductions and share the agenda. and including your spot in the agenda, Ali. In the meantime, if you have any questions, do throw them in the chat. I'm monitoring the chat on my phone so that it's not interrupting the screen. I'm going to quickly take us all through our agenda for this Q2 edition of the Primero Data Challenge. Let's just start by saying welcome to the community. I do treat this as an opportunity to get to know Primero community members, understand where you're working and what you're doing, so please be active. It's an informal, engaging format for a meeting. We really want to make sure that there's opportunities for you to contribute and to share your different perspectives, your challenges, what's working for you. Very importantly, what we want to do is give people the opportunity to shine a bit of a spotlight on the good examples that we see of Primero data usage in the field. So with that in mind, I'm going to quickly go over the agenda, including some quick introductions, and talk to you a little bit about what we hope to cover in this webinar. It is being recorded. I hope you're all comfortable with that, and it will be published onto that same microsite link that I shared in the chat just moments ago. So quickly to get to our agenda, today we have a really interesting group of participants joining. You just heard Ali talking there. He's the system administrator for the CPIMS in Iraq, and much more than that. He's a very impressive system administrator, managing to do lots of really fantastic work with the teams there. We're also going to pivot a little bit towards a different kind of data usage and data focus that we don't normally talk about a lot, but I think is a very important perspective to share with all of you. And this is with our colleague Nke, who supports us in the UNICEF ITCD team. Nke's role in the team, he works as a DevOps engineer, as a sort of infrastructure support to the Primero team. And we're going to talk a little bit about the data that Nke sees and manages as well. Then, the most popular person in the Primero verse, Shingaly Panchalingam, who is our deployment lead and basically the authority on all things Primero implementation. Jan is going to talk us through some changes that have taken place on the Primero product on the back end and the implications that they have for all of you. So you all know me. I'm going to be kind of chairing and trying to keep a flow to this. I'll also be, like I said, I'll be doing my best to observe the chat. I want to be clear that this is meant to be interactive, so please do shoot us questions, even chime in with questions if you have them as we're going along. It's an informal setting. After this little bit of an agenda setup, what we're going to do is I'll quickly take you through what is the Primero Data Challenge again, and some of the recap from the Q1 edition. I know there are quite a few people that didn't make that first webinar, so this will be a quick recap for them. And then we're going to go into these 3 data use examples that I just briefly described. We're going to start with Nke because he has to be somewhere else in the second half of the webinar. Then we're going to transition to Ali and his experience developing a dashboard for the CPIMS in Iraq. Very impressive work. Lots of learning here to share. So we want to make sure Ali has a good amount of time to take us through how he's done this. Then we're going to shift over to Jan and talk about these changes that we've been making to the Primero product and have a quick conversation about what we want to do next, including, topics for conversation, investments in the product, etc. So I'm going to proceed now. We're 10 minutes in. Hopefully more people are joining as we go. A quick recap about what is the Primero Data Challenge and what is it for. I think the very, very quick description that I would provide is that it's a community of practice, right? Our goal is to convene this community of practice every quarter so that it's not a huge amount of your time or a lift, and that it's progressive and participatory so that we're building on these themes and we're developing a sort of body of knowledge And like I said, giving the field an opportunity to contribute directly into this body of knowledge. So what we'd like to do is invite and nominate different use cases and challenges from different teams in the field. Right now, we've focused a lot on case management and that type of work, but Primero is also involved in incident monitoring and family tracing and other things. So we have lots of material to cover. And we want to create incentives for responsible data use. Now, this is important because Primero can do a lot of good stuff to help us make sure that data is being used responsibly. But the bottom line is it comes down to individuals and how they use data and how we talk about data. So we want to create a lot of incentives for positive and responsible data use. By the end of the year, each year, the idea is we're going to look at these solutions that have been presented and try to give that team or program a little treat, a little prize for the effort that they made. And let's be clear about this. Everybody wins when we invest in the product. So this is just a way to keep an incentive structure clear. Our objectives are three. This particular group is about use of data, right? It's about data use. So our goal is to improve responsible, effective data usage for programming insights, right? And to share experiences, build capacity, and strengthen community. This is the community of practice. And then also to inform our own investment in the improvement of Primero products and services. The end goal of all this, better results for children and survivors of violence, and hopefully a long and sustainable and productive digital engagement with this community. Moving forward, quick recap. I'm going to do this in 2 minutes. The first thing is aligning our recap from Q1 with our own objectives. The first one is to improve the responsible effective data usage. Well, we talked a lot about responsible data for children.org and data responsibility principles, and you should all be aware of those and how they work. We talked about how exporting data comes with risks. So when we do take data out of Primero, we have to make sure we're putting certain controls in place to ensure that that data is secure, and when that data is not being used, that we're effectively that we're destroying it. We also want to look at the shared experience thing. So we saw this really fantastic example of the use of the API for a dashboard in Guatemala, how they use Power BI to do that. And we also heard about I'm going to erase my typographical error. We heard about some challenges in Jordan as well. And the Jordan team, I invited them to come today and present on the work we're doing there, but we're still sort of in an early stage of it, so we'll postpone that for the next meeting. We talked about the concept of the data lake and how that might be an option going forward for a large analytical tool that's very safe and could possibly allow us to do more types of machine learning type of information analytics on that data. And we developed and shared a how-to guidance on the Primero Cases API, which is on that microsite that I shared with you, and we're still collecting feedback on that. The final item here is on the products and services. So we talked about the limitations of our own infrastructure and the way Primero works, but we also want to share with you today, Jan and Nke will both talk a little bit about improvements that we've made in the Primero service offering. So that is my very quick recap of the Q1 work. I'm going to switch back over to my Teams channel just to make sure that I'm not missing anything on the chat. Great. I'm going to skip back over to this. And Nke, you're on the line, yes?
Yes.
Excellent. So I'm going to just read out a little bit of information about what you're going to do, and then Nke, you can take over the screen and present. Ready?
Okay. Let's go.
Okay. So we're going to talk a little bit about something rather new to a lot of us, including myself. We spent some time with the ICTD team in Valencia a few weeks ago talking about observability. And this is essentially understanding that the infrastructure that we use to put Primero out into the world has lots of tooling that allow us to see what's going on with it. And if we're very proactive and professional about how we do this, we can learn a lot from that information, that data that Azure is providing us. There's a tool that Nke is going to show us called Log Analytics. And what we really want to focus on is, how does this help us do a better job? It's not just there for the purposes of having fancy analytics. How is this going to help us actually deliver better services or be more effective in our programming? So I wanted to start with this blanket statement that our main vehicle for generating results for children and survivors of violence in vulnerable populations is the workforce, right? And when we talk about Primero Data, we're not just talking about the data that a caseworker types into Primero, right? There's a lot of other data that we're generating and collecting through the usage of Primero that isn't typed in through the user interface, right? And we have to be very cognizant that we cannot consolidate case level data at the global level. So nor do we want to do that, nor do we have the ability to do that. And that's a trust issue. We don't, at the global level, reach into the individual implementations and pull out volumes of case data so that we compare the casework that's happening in one country to another or at a global level. That's just a violation of the trust and the ethics that we have, but it's also not something that we can currently do technically. So what we did want to share with you is what we can see at a global level in that's with respect to the day-to-day Primero usage and how this generates massive amounts of data, calls to the system, when the system is up and down, when so Nke is going to show us what he sees when he uses log analytics and how it helps us have a global view of Primero's health and how our social services workforce is actually using the tool. So Nke, with that, I'm going to hand it back to you and hand you over the screen.
Can you see my screen? Can you see my screen?
Yep, it's small, but I can see it.
It's small?
There we go. Now you're up. Great.
Okay. Okay. Can you see? I just have a few slides to quickly run through, and then we can dive into demo. Good day, colleagues, and pretty sorry, I'm not much of a presenter, but I hope this will be insightful at the end of the day. So apparently, just as Rob has said, I would like to reiterate that from our own end, from the technical perspective, we do not have visibilities to data privacy as regarding Primero instance and implementations across all the countries and implementations using Primero. We have data that we collect from our own end, which is tied to the few points I'm going to go through in this slide. So it is titled Infrastructure Observability, and I'll be focusing for today because I have few times to spend, and at the same time, as time goes on, if this continues with we featuring in, probably we share more insight. But then we are looking at base infrastructure data we collect from the infrastructure. I believe somewhere along the line, you would also want to figure out how some of these things, good stuff that Primero offers, happen. So, and the kind of infrastructure that we use and the kind of data that we collect from this infrastructure, the health status of the infrastructure and the implementations that are in this infrastructure that are serving contents to the user, the performance utilization data, and operational activities. These are basically what I'll be focusing on. So infrastructure, we're looking at the cluster-wise infrastructure data that we gather from Primero's standpoint. We're looking at the health, we're looking at how does this infrastructure work? How stable is it? Is there any problem? When do we need to scale it up to make sure that there are no glitches or to make sure that we are providing better services to the users? And at the same time, we also wonder how, because Primero is a gigantic application. If you can see what's going on in that cluster, you see that there's a lot of numerous things going on. And sometimes somewhere, if you do not keep an eye on it consistently, you would not know how individual implementation, when I use the word implementation, I mean individual instances, maybe Guatemala, maybe Ghana, maybe Brazil, how they are interacting with this infrastructure and how their interaction is also affecting the rest of the neighbors or the rest of the people who are using this same service. So those are the things that we put on constant observation to see and monitor. So I would quickly go into log analytics, and I believe we can see in log analytics there are so many things we can do. There are so many queries we can run to spool data from this large database that goes into the Primero environment and spool a lot of data. And we've also been able to consolidate this data into a dashboard where it is possible for you to see at a glance what is going on in the Primero environment, right? I don't know. Give me 1 second. I have to minimize. Okay, good. That's good. So we have I'll be presenting this dashboard for us to see, and I hope this makes sense at the end of the day. So, for example, utilizations. In utilization perspective, if I'm to pick what are the things that we see as Primero DevOps engineer, I'm looking at these spikes. I'm looking at spikes that could happen. What are the reasons why we are having the spike? What impact is this spike causing to Primero availability? So when we come here, we can see the average numbers of CPU consumed within this gigantic cluster as people are hitting and using the Primero instance. These numbers are actually real and factual. And when we have issues, for example, or when we come up to do auditing at the end of the day, these are the things that we observe. Why is there a spike? For example, on May 31st, straight to June, something is happening right here. Utilization is normally at 60%. For it going up to this extent means something is going wrong or something has happened. So it is for us to drill down into the infrastructure and see exactly where this problem could happen. This could be reporting. This could be anything. Now, my duty here is not to tell you exactly what this particular spike means, but probably because it aligns at the end of the month, maybe some people somewhere using Primero are doing high data report generation activities, which could cause spiking. Now, the spiking also shouldn't be something that we are worried about. At the same time, we are worried about it. So it's like a two-side of the coin. Why is there a spike? Something is happening. Oh, this spike, is it leading to downtime? Yes or no? If it is yes, then proactively we know what to do as regarding that. Else, it is just a spike indicating that you are doing something as users and we are aware of what you're doing. But to the detail of what you are doing, yeah.
If I can ask a question, because we want to make sure that this is like relevant for everyone, but
Okay.
understanding that this is the only way that we have a global perspective on what's happening in Primero through these log analytics dashboards. Nke just made a suggestion. We were talking about this yesterday, like what these spikes in utilization of these common computing resources. Remember, we talked about this in the first edition. Primero is an application like most applications that uses common resources. So if everybody's going at those resources at the same time, then the utilization is going to spike. So this is an example where if we look at historically where these spikes happen, they do happen at specific times of the month. And this, we believe, could have to do with reporting requirements. So imagine every organization, and there are more than 75 implementations now. Every organization has, 2 or 3 days before the end of the month, has to produce the metrics that they need for their organizational or their implementation level reporting. And if that happens 75 times within the same few day period, you're going to see a dramatic change in that utilization metric. That can have impact on performance as well. So the question is, one, how sure are we that that's the cause of the spike? And two, how can we anticipate that going forward and prepare the field for it so that we can avoid there being any negative implications for people? So that was kind of the important detail here, because many of the people that join these calls are system administrators or are responsible themselves for this type of reporting.
So you want me to expatiate more on how we can use this information to avoid
No, I think unless there are any specific questions about it, we can go to the next dashboard that we talked about. Maybe the gateway dashboard is the next most interesting one.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that's to sit on what Robert said is basically that what happens with these dashboards. And then the other interesting ones that we look at is we're looking at is what happens in the gateway. All right. What happens to the gateway? What happens to the requests that are coming in? Now, when request comes to Primero, it first gets to what we call the application gateway, which manages requests. An application gateway in Primero, we have two instances that tells us exactly what is going on and how things are faring. And we can look at this dashboard that shows how application gate 1 is faring, numbers of requests that are failing, and numbers of requests that are going through. I think sometimes if you look at this, this is 1, 2 to 15, my time, and we are already having this number of total requests that are going. You can see how this spike of utilization is hitting and is going up and down, fluctuating over this gateway. Now, where we get very, very worried is when we have an increasing number of failed requests. So if you look at this, we have total sum of requests. We are looking at 961 concurrent users. This could be 10 users, 5 users, 200 users, different tabs, hitting application gateway on Primero service response, right? And at the same time, we are also capturing what's the total numbers of failed requests that is happening at the same time. When this number begins to spike up, for example, that is when we get worried. Perhaps something is happening. An application gateway is reporting this incident to us via this dashboard, telling us that I can't serve requests to the users. Can you go and check if all is fine? And that we can proactively act on. So we have two gateways, and we can see what's going on within these gateways. We only have one failed request on gateway 1 at the moment, and we have 2.0K requests going on there in gateway 2, which is also heavily used as at now. We are doing 962, and there is no failed request. Now, this failed request is not like there's a problem. Could be network glitches, could be whatever reason it might be, but this dashboard tells us what is going on within the application gateway to the back end services that are responding to the application gateway. And one other thing that is also interesting that we've been able to put together is to take count of storages per implementations that we have in the Primero instance based on how we onboard instances. So this is basically it. Now, I would also like to iterate at this point that I wouldn't want to go deep into querying log analytics. That will be very boring, but these queries that are bringing out these data have been carefully constructed to return the data that we believe at every time or in real-time scenario could give us insight to how Primero is behaving and how available it is to provide the services it has promised to provide. So I don't know if you have any other questions.
There are a couple of cool questions actually in the link that are quite relevant. Hazem, I don't know if you want to come in and ask this directly, but Nke's the person to ask. I can read the question as well. Yes, some people don't have access to the microphone. I mean, I think it's I just must have mistaken the settings for the webinar. To set so this is a question on setting a limit on the number of API calls that one user could use and not exceed in order to limit the CPU utilization. So that for me is interesting because in some use cases that we have partners that are actually using multiple access points. Basically, they're using multiple users at the same time. So they have multiple tabs open depending on their role. For example, like a helpline role. So that is actually something that we investigated with the ICTD team as more of a security issue. Also, when these endpoints, like basically when Nke is talking about a gateway. This is anytime anybody is trying to access Primero. Sometimes that type of access comes from a place where it's very unusual that we would be getting, for example, in a Latin American implementation, that we would be getting an access request from the other side of the world. Azure will actually highlight that for us and will indicate for us that this is an unusual access request and actually help us block those things. So these are the ways that infrastructure data can actually add value for our programs, keep Primero functioning well, and help us anticipate when there are going to be spikes in usage that we can then we can prepare for, so that your teams don't see or feel any performance impact from those. Is it possible to get the analytics for instance? We don't actually do namespace level analytics. It's possible to get some information, but it's not the same as this. So it's hard to sort of parse out specific implementations, but maybe Nke, you can answer that question. Is it possible for us to obtain analytics for our instance?
Yeah, it is possible to get this query resolved in instance level, but it's not something that we believe we want to go to that granular, because it is a lot of instances and it's more a thing of like, oh, okay, if I get an instance utilization for a particular instance, what are the data that I am getting from it, and how is it different from what we are also receiving from here? So the instance alone is not enough to cause a spike to pull down or to bring down Primero. So generically, it is a cumulative record that we get, that we have presented here, that can help us monitor better. So that information would really not tell us much about the problem that might arise, or the reason why we are having to monitor Primero availability using dashboards. So it's more like insignificant, but it is possible.
Cool. Well, thank you. If there are no other questions, we'll keep moving on. We'll move into the next segment of the agenda. But I thought it was a really important opportunity for the Primero community to see what the engineers behind Primero can see, and start to think about how we can take advantage of this. This data persists for a period of time, and we can run analyses on it. We can think about how this data could be useful in terms of global trends as well. And it's also very helpful in terms of us responding to the needs of our end users. So thank you very much, Nke, for taking the time. I know you're very busy and you have a whole lot of backstopping to do this week. We will get you to pull out a couple screenshots for the presentation that we'll share with everybody so that they can see how log analytics is working.
Okay.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take back control of the screen, and I'm going to quickly scoot back over to the next segment of the meeting. We are going to now look at a very fantastic example of data usage from the field. This is the Iraq CPIMS Plus dashboards. So I want to just preface this for our colleague Ali, because we're very at the global level. We watch what he does and we're very impressed by it. It's a great opportunity for other members of the community to learn from him. So this is CPIMS Plus in Iraq has been around for many years, and it's consistently sort of grown and done unique and interesting things. This is one of our more successful implementations. Not only is it a great example of an intervention that started during a humanitarian programming phase and then moved into a scale in a development programming phase. It's also a very interesting story of scaling within a country. So we often talk about scaling as if it's in different countries. That's what scale means, is to be working in many countries. But being at scale within a country is probably a more important metric. And so this is a part of the story in Iraq as well. So what I wanted to say to preface your work, Ali, is that the Iraq CPIMS brings together partners from all over this country, very diverse partners. And by providing these partners with accurate and useful data visualizations, they're more invested into this shared partnership. They're more invested into the work that they're doing. It's another service that's being offered that strengthens the collective and the results that those partners can achieve. So Ali is the Iraq CPIMS system admin, but he also has a master's in computer science, and he's a professor at the University of the Hook. So very impressive. Ali, if you're ready, I will let you take the screen and share your presentation on the Iraq CPIMS Plus.
Yeah. So good morning, good afternoon to everyone. So this is Ali. Thank you, Robert, for introducing me. I have here with me my colleague Hadar as well, which is a UNICEF IMO, which helped us a lot in terms of the data visualization that we did on our instance. So now I'll be trying to share my screen. Just let me know if you can see it.
Yep, we can see it now, Ali.
Yeah. So first of all, I will take you through the reasons and the need that we had to develop a CPIMS dashboard, an external dashboard. And I'm pretty sure those needs and points will be much relatable in other contexts as well. And then we will go through some data pre-processing that we had to do before feeding the dashboard with data. And then my colleague Hadar will take us through the visuals of the dashboard and the final look of the dashboard. So yeah, as for the need, let me present here. The points of need or the need for a dashboard. Well, firstly, since system administrator already know this, that the insights on the data in the system, the CPIMS or any other Primero system, can be only accessible with people who are actually users of the system and have access to the data. So we thought of that we want to show those insights, those statistics to other stakeholders as well, or donors, say, and even other sectors, and most importantly, governmental agencies as well. So that was the main reason we even put the dashboard in our rollout plan. As another point, CPIMS Plus already provides some dashboard designing functionalities. We call them reports. They are pieces of dashboards. So you can design a chart or a table that can be extracted from your data. CPIMS does provide those functionalities, but when you have raw data, when you extract, and by the way, we did the dashboard not through the API, but through extracting the data and then feeding it manually to the Power BI. So when you extract those data, you get raw data, and when you have raw data with a small background of information management, you can explore more possibilities. You can like come up with more insights than there are already in the system available. You can even extract knowledge about those data, which is also called meta data, like by combining a couple of columns to. I will get to the knowledge part in the next slide. So yeah, this point, like summarize that you will have more possibilities when you have raw data. Another point which Nke just referred to, I think this relates to somehow, when you extract all the data from the system, the data that you want to work on, and feed it to the Microsoft Power BI server, you decrease the load on the system, because every time when you design an internal report in the CPIMS or GPIMS or any other system, whenever that report is clicked, whenever it's opened, and correct me guys if I'm wrong, it generates a request to fetch all of those data, because it's live data. It needs to search throughout the whole database to apply the conditions, the query of that report, and then fetch all of those applicable or all of those records that apply, that query applies on. So that's some load on the system as well. But when you extract all of this data, put them in a Power BI dashboard, all of the fetching, all of the requests are all done outside the system. So this is some load decreased on the Primero server. As for presence, so the dashboard gave us more presence in terms of CPIMS itself and their partners as well. So for CPIMS, once I disseminated the email of the dashboard that now we have a dashboard and you can all access it and navigate through it. In a period of 2 to 3 days, I received emails from 4 to 5 agencies that were not CPIMS partners somehow. They were like hidden. They reach out to me like, how can we be present in this? How can we join? Why isn't our name enlisted in the agencies' names? Not just partners, even sectors, even other sectors contacted me like, how can we get something like this? How can we develop it? Could you help us? This is in terms of CPIMS itself, and for the partners themselves, since this dashboard is being seen by donors, agencies, and even governmental agencies, it would give more presence to the partner and visibility to the partner, to the CPIMS plus partners themselves as well. Another point was for M&E purposes, so it provides overall insights on the data, overall statistics. That is good for the M&E, for the national level, say, coordination structures. And we also included some M&E specific indicators in the dashboard that I will get to in when she presents it. The final point, and the obvious one, is since the data are on national level, so there will be good resources for planning, project or program planning, gap identification, which we currently use it for, and overall analysis on the situation of case management in the country. I think most of these points would be relatable to other contexts as well. So after we extract the data, we do a lot of data pre-processing to get like the insights that we want, that we have in our imagination. One of the manipulations that we do is splitting those data. So these are basically also the reasons why we did not use the API. Because we do a lot of data splitting, because of Primero, when it gives you data, when it gives you, for example, the location of the child, it puts double columns between the ADMA levels of the location. So we needed that to be split into many columns, so we would have better results and insights. That was one of the splitting, one of the manipulation that we did. Another factor that we had to include is not extracting knowledge from the data. So say, for example, you have the date of registration of the case. That is a piece of information. And then you have the date of the first service implemented for that case. That's also a piece of information. But if you combine both of those pieces, like calculate the period between both of those fields, you'll get knowledge, not just information. You get knowledge that it took the caseworker this amount of time or days in order to provide the first service. Is that acceptable or not? It depends on the risk level and the case concerns and many other factors. So it relates to many things. So that is a piece of knowledge. That's one example that they give. It is useful for M&E, it's useful for follow-ups and supervision, and it's also useful for future improvements in the implementation of case management, in the quality of case management, not just the quantity. Another problem that we had is data dependency. This is a computer science specific term, which let me simplify it by referring to a case. So a case is an object, and then there are other objects that depend on the case. One of them being the services. So the case can exist on its own, but a service cannot exist on its own. You need a case so that you can have a service. And on the other hand, each case may have multiple services. And same goes for the follow-ups as well. So when we generate a query, say we extract 20 fields that relate directly to the case, and then 2 other fields that relate to the services of that case. And that case has multiple services. Keep that in mind as well. So when we extract those two service-related fields would give us a huge problem here, because it will give us data duplication. For each of the, say that case has 5 services, the data of the case itself will be duplicated 4 extra times, because it has to be aligned with the case itself. So what we did here is to extract only the case ID and do an external query for the services data upload, accompanied or associated with the case ID only, so that we can do some relationship between those tables and combine them both together. The dashboard was so useful for us. Matter of fact, I would also recommend for the global team to like organize a Power BI training. I would find it very useful for the user, for the system admins in all the instances and countries. Because I don't know if all of them know how to use Power BI, but it would be useful because it would give a lot more benefits to your work. Now, Hadar, if you can talk, I don't, Robert, could you make her like a presenter or something so she can present
Sure.
us the dashboard?
Sure. I'm looking for Hadar, yeah?
Hadar Nabat, yeah.
All right, and you should be a presenter now, Hadar.
Okay, I can use my mic now. Thank you so much, Robert, and thank you, Ali. Ali, would you be able to share the dashboard?
Yeah.
Okay,
Maybe
so
did
yeah.
did you introduce yourself, Hadar, for everyone?
Oh no, yeah, sorry. So my name is Hadar Nabati. I was the Information Management Officer for Child Protection in UNICEF, but I moved my role, still Information Management Officer within the health section now. It's been some time, but yeah, we worked together, myself and Ali, to produce this dashboard from CPIMS Plus data. So in additional to what Ali was mentioning right now, I would like also to say that since the cluster has deactivated in Iraq, this kept the same, this kept the only channel for CP actors to connect. So previously within the cluster activation and the coordination system, we had a channel to connect all the CP actors together in Iraq, but we lost the channel. Now we have only the CPIMS Plus dashboard, which actors can access the information of which organization is providing case management in which location and what are the cases. So, I mean, coming back to the dashboard, this is after few versions and few editing, we came up with this. We might also change, we might also bring new ideas, but so far this is what we are using. So as you can see on the top right, we have the timeline. So it can be filtered by only one quarter or 1 month or the entire period of the reporting cycle. It's the 3 pages dashboard. On the left side, we have the filter part. The filter part and the timeline is duplicated in all pages. So when we filter here through the filters, or we select a specific time or the specific month in the timeline, it applies for all the pages. The kind of information we are focusing on is, of course, the total number of cases on top, and currently in CPIMS Plus in 2023. So it's not all the cases that we had in the CPIMS Plus, but only the 2023. We have another dashboard which is not published, but we send it only to those who need the information of previous years. We have the children with disability, cases. As you know, Iraq is a mixed context, so that's why it's always required to analyze the data per the population group. We have IDPs, we have refugees, we have asylum seekers, and we have, different refugee types from different countries. Then cases by nationality, as you can see, it's mostly Iraq and Syria, since we had an internal crisis and we had refugees from Syria. A number of cases by agency, so it's just filtered or it's sorted which agency is having the most cases in 2023. Of course, this can be linked to location later. Like, for example, the first or the highest number of cases is within Dolsa. Is Dolsa covering the locations that has highest population in need group or not? That's in another page. We can also do kind of analysis or analytical thinking while we look at the data. Of course, the gender is very important. Case status. So is it the case is still open? How many of 2023 cases is still open? How many has been already closed? If the case has been reopened, which is just 1%, it's very few. Duration. So this is the meta data that Ali was explaining. Duration of cases in months, how long the case is taking from the issuance until close. So the first column is open cases. The other is 1 month, 2 months, 0 means less than 1 month, and so on. And protection concern, of course, it's presented here. If we go to the other page. Okay, so here we are focusing on the services provided to the cases and the locations where they are. If we look at the map, the darkest locations means the highest cases. Yeah. So, for example, Ninawa, if you keep your mouse, Ninawa has the most cases of Iraq, which is 1.4K. Of course, we have service response. Is it a direct response or it is referred cases? We have the parent level of satisfaction or child satisfaction and parent level. This is always good to show to the service provider to know, like, the cases, the parents and the child are satisfied with the service or not. Then again, the last one on top, on the bottom left, the bottom right is the location, the exact location of cases per camp and location level. Yeah. Last page, it's about the case details. Here, one of the very important things we wanted to show is the urgent interventions that are needed and the type of intervention. Out of the total cases we can see that only 17 of them, they need personal intervention, 11 family, 6 community health intervention, and so on. So we wanted to show the percentage of urgent cases by type comparing to number of cases we have. But it's also, if you can see the relationship of the caregiver to the child, which is mostly they are with their parents. The separation status. So we have most of the cases is not separated or unaccompanied, but few cases either separated or unaccompanied. Lack of documentation. This was important, especially during HRP. In Iraq, we have some cases, or it was one of the humanitarian focus during 2022. And the children with lack of documentation, they couldn't access many services, including education services, which would be leading to child protection issues. So within the case management, we wanted to show how many of these cases have lack of documents. And you know, it's still, I think, important for the case workers, for the case actors to know. We have the cases by risk level, so it's mostly it's medium. We showed also the case arrangement at closing. So most of the cases are with their biological parents, let's say. Then reasons of closing the cases also is showing in the last visual. This is the overall. We have a lot of information which we can present and analyze, but we didn't want to complicate it more for especially the outsiders. Ali, if you would like to add anything to that?
Yeah, thanks, Hadar. That was everything about the visuals, and if you have any questions, please go ahead. My recommendation was for the global team is to organize, as I mentioned, a PowerBI training. I think it would be very useful.
That's excellent. Very, very impressive. We have 2 panels. Yeah. With your permission, I'm going to bring up the dashboard. I have a copy of it here. Is that okay? Did I share this?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Okay. Because there are a couple of things that I want to double back on. We did. I did put in the chat there that a question to the participants is if we did organize a training, would that be something that people would be interested in? I did want to bring everybody's attention to the Power BI guidance that we shared in the last meeting, just because it goes part of the way to explaining how the API works. And really, I think my question to everybody is, did anybody use this since the last time we met? Has anybody had any experience trying? I'm thinking maybe our colleagues at UNRWA, because I know, Lama, that you've been involved in this. Does anybody have any feedback to share on the documentation that we did produce for the API and for using Power BI? Just really to sort of understand how best to offer this as a support service. Obviously, we don't have a large enough team that we can do an extensive process with every implementation to do this, but we can learn from each other and generate documentation that's easy to follow, that has clear examples, for example. So did anybody have an opportunity to review the documentation that we shared in the last Primero Data Challenge? I can also link it in here, but I do want you to use the site that we've created for this. So let me just plug in some links for you. We really believe in getting user feedback for this. So let's try it. Let's see what you can do. Primero has the tooling for you to use the API to connect to Power BI. We can also focus on, like Ali mentioned, that taking the data out of Primero, cleaning it, and organizing it does give you some advantages that data directly drawn from Primero in an API call doesn't currently give you, with the caveat that you now have copies of that data outside the system, and it's your responsibility to ensure it's secured. But this is something we would like to see more of. And from my, as a product owner, as a manager for this product, one of the main issues that we see is Primero, people want more reporting features in Primero. They want Primero to do more of this type of thing in the app. And there are limits to what we can do within Primero, the application. The reporting functionality, we can't recreate the functionality that you see in Power BI in Primero. So we're relying on external visualization tools. And that means we need to make it, we need to make it accessible to our community. So any feedback you want to provide on that, your experiences using this documentation, your experiences working with Power BI or other data viz tools, that's part of the reason we're all here today. I won't speak any more on that point, but I would like to hear questions or feedback or anything that you want to ask to Hadar and to Ali on this, what I consider to be a very impressive piece of work, a very dynamic, very user-friendly, and important data visualization tool. So any questions, comments, feedback? No problem if not, but just to understand that we have a wealth of data at our disposal, and using it is part of our responsibility. Making the most of it is part of our responsibility. As child protection professionals, collecting data and underutilizing it is a concern, right? Because it leads to more data being collected, fewer insights being identified. So just a wonderful example of what can be done. And I have a couple of questions if you'll permit me, but if you could just, Ali or Hadar, either or, if you could just give me an estimate, you're going to reproduce this, you're going to basically update this every month. Is that correct?
Yes, Robert. So we are currently we have like a query in our head. We design it throughout the report generate or the custom report generator inside the Primero inside the CPIMS. So we generate that query every month, and we get the same result. We do the pre-processing, and then we submit it for the PowerBI.
How much time do you have to allocate for that task? Now that you have it sort of set up to update it, how much time do you think it will require for you?
Yeah, good question, Robert. If you work carefully, like, and have an overview on the data before like submitting it, thinking through it, navigating, it will take like a half a day every month.
A half a day a month.
Yeah.
And you said within a few days you were getting multiple requests to be added to. So
Exactly.
I think it's a very clear indication of how this adds value for a program. It gives legitimacy, it gives visibility, but it also gives you, a set of gauges, right, to see where things are going, and allows you to gives you that data that you need to prepare. So from Abid in the chat, other than the number, it would be good to present the percentage, and if there is an option to select top 10 protection concerns between different quarters, or sort of like a trend. So trends in changing protection concerns, for example. Well, I've only looked at this briefly, but I could already see that, if we drill into the date toggle here, let's just look at, for example, physical abuse. We have 186 registered cases with that protection concern in January. That's interesting. Where did it go? Oh, it's up here now. It's approximately the same in February, slightly lower in March, quite a bit lower in April. So there is definitely a trending down in terms of the total number. But yeah, that's an interesting thought, Abid. Yeah. Any other questions or feedback for the team? I really want to.
Robert,
Please go ahead.
if I may answer Abid here, that's actually a good question. That was what I was referring to as knowledge. So Abid, if you search through the whole CPIMS system, you could not find like an attribute or a field that stores that piece of information. So that piece of information should be extracted through combining multiple other fields. For example, like the date, specifying the specific date, the specific location, and then looking through the top trending protection concerns in that date, during that date, in that location, for that specific age group of children, say, you can. What I'm referring to is that you can apply multiple conditions, multiple criteria to what you are looking for. This is exactly what I was referring to as knowledge. So we are still working on that, extracting more knowledge from these pieces of data, and it is achievable. It is like easily achievable. Yeah.
Great. Ali, we have another question here from Lama with UNRWA. If a new requirement has come in, such as the addition of a new field in the report, how long would it take you to implement this change and update the report?
Yeah. So it's a PowerBI. So if you have a new field added to the system, you should like, I mean, Llama, I think you have already used the custom export, which is in the system. You only have to add that new field into the custom export, and then for the Power BI, you just design a chart for it. It wouldn't take much time.
Great, good practical question. Faneth from Cambodia is asking about, is UNICEF managing this dashboard? I guess that means, is it on a UNICEF account, but also ongoing management?
Yeah, so I'm not sure which question you're referring, but I saw that in John's comment. Robert?
I'm sorry, I'm seeing them out of sequence here. I'm asking you, Finesse, first. So how are you able to publish this Power BI publicly? What kind of account do you need?
So it's a paid account, of course. UNICEF helped with that. We have an IT from UNICEF which helped us using his account in publishing this dashboard. So after we designed everything, we put the data in place. We just, by the way, these data do not include any identifiable records or fields in it. It's only statistical fields. So after that, we submitted those data and the dashboard to the IT, and then using his account, which is a paid account, he managed to publish it publicly.
Excellent. Any other questions for the Iraq colleagues before we move on? I'm looking at the chat. I don't see anything. Really, I just want to say how much I appreciate you both coming on and sharing this work. It's a great example of exactly what we're trying to demonstrate here. So congratulations on this being, so it's a very impressive dashboard. And thanks for joining. Mikalash. Miriam's asking, would we be able to generate the time between different steps in the case management process to ensure or to measure the performance of caseworkers and supervisors?
Miriam, if you have that date stored in the CPIMS, I mean, you can always measure the distance between those dates. So say that date refers to the date that the service started, and then you have another date that refers to when the follow-up started, when the closure started. Then you can compare all of those dates through simple formulas. You can calculate the number of days, months, or like even hours that was the difference or between those dates.
Excellent. There's another question here. A couple of other questions here on the type of account. So let me just scroll up here. Anyone in UNICEF or any organization who wants to publish by only sharing the Power BI. Okay, so this is a response to, okay, Heather's responding to the previous question. Is there an API for Tableau from Primero? This is from Kingsley in Ghana. So Kingsley, the API is not specific for the destination system. It's documented, and basically you can read the Tableau API documentation, and you can read the Primero API documentation, and that should give you enough instruction about the ability to ingest data from Primero into Tableau. I'm assuming it's a RESTful API, but I'm 99% sure that that's the case with Tableau. So this is an exciting topic that I would like to talk about going forward. Other visualization tools that people are using. So maybe that's one that we can include in on the list for a future conversation, Kingsley. And then Miriam. Okay, Miriam's providing the different dates or phases in the processing of a case that could potentially be used. My only my only caveat or my only warning to you would be, and this was a nice segue into what Jan is going to present for us today, is that when you're asking Primero to generate large amounts of data about cases that are longitudinal, right? That take place over time. So if you're asking for multiple cases to have multiple data points that are based on dates, that's a significant draw on the computing resources. As we saw before, those resources are limited. So what we're advising everybody to do now, in a case like the CPIMS in Lebanon, where you have, I'm not sure if you're talking about CPIMS. I'm assuming you're talking about CPIMS based on the question, Miriam. But many thousands of cases in Lebanon, you would not want to run that report for the entire caseload at one time. That's almost certainly going to cause you to, really overwhelm the computing resources that are at your disposal. So what you could try to do is limit it to a smaller number of records instead of the entire caseload, or you could start with a specific organization, for example, and do it that way. So you're sort of parsing out the data and not not asking too much of the system. I would also reiterate that in a situation like that, always makes sense to do that after the peak working hours, right? So if you're going to run reports, it's always a smart idea to parse them and to not make those demands on the system when other people are depending on access. Wow, this has been a good presentation for generating chatter. I don't see any other direct questions, and we do want to stay on time. So once again, huge thanks to the colleagues in Iraq for a very impressive piece of work. I'm going to switch back quickly to my presentation so that I can introduce our next session. This is, again, aligned with our objectives. How are we using the Primero Data Challenge to improve Primero products and services? So for this one, we're going to talk about a change we're making gradually to the Primero tech stack and the implications that might have for you and your teams. So we often hear people use the word database. Primero is a database, right? Or Primero has a database. But very often, we don't have a good understanding of what they actually are and how they work, and how one database might be different from another, and how one database might be great at doing one thing and terrible at doing something else. Well, the difference that we're talking about a database in an information management system, the database itself is just where information lives, and you can use different methods to query it or to access it. An information management system is much more than that. It has things that help people do their day-to-day job. So not all databases are equal. And recently, Primero team opted to do a major change in our tech stack, and this has implications. So with that, I'm introducing somebody that you already know and love, Jan Panchalingam, Primero Deployment Specialist at UNICEF HQ, and the leading technical authority on how Primero is implemented for programs. Jan, over to you.
Thanks, Robert. That was a great introduction to what I'm going to show you guys. Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning to everyone. It's morning for me, so please excuse me if there's any mistakes as I'm doing this. But so that was exactly what I'm going to be talking about. And I think the main thing about all of you that are on the call is some of you are child protection specialists transitioning into the technology space, and I really wanted to make sure that you feel comfortable articulating different things about our database. And so I know I'm going to be starting at the beginning, but I really wanted to talk about what is a database. Nke, when he did his presentation and he was talking to us about log analytics and the monitoring, he had a little image that looked like the one on the right here. And you're going to see this type of image whenever you're looking at any sort of infrastructure diagrams. And this is what we call a database. So really, it's the way that we store all of our information that's in Primero. It's designed to be efficient, to be able to modify, to be able to manipulate, and it's structured in a very systematic and structured way. So what I wanted to walk you guys through in today's presentation is what type of database is used in Primero and why did we choose specific databases, and then what does that mean for the data when we're utilizing the reporting functionality within the system. So you may have seen a lot of chatter in the Skype chat and also in our release notes on the changes that we were having in the reports in version 2.6.0. So not the one that just came out to production a few days ago, but the one right before that. Prior to that release 2.6.0, we were using Solar. So this is an open source platform that really was chosen because it's super fast and scalable and mainly for searching and indexing. So we're trying to handle a large volume of data and query it efficiently. And this was something that was especially useful for those of you who are using the family tracing and reunification functionality. So for example, when we're doing that fuzzy matching and trying to do FTR, Solar databases are fantastic for that because we're able to match not on exactly the query that you're asking for, but kind of a fuzzy match. And it's going to pull specific criteria and explore that data, which is why it was very useful for FTR. But then it's also really good for when you're searching for child names, for example, when you spell Mohammed with an O or a U, whatever it is, this is the type of database that makes it so that fuzzy match can happen. So that second type of switch that we had now since 2.6.0 is we now switched to PostgreSQL. You guys have probably heard about SQL and SQL language, and it's a programming standard across the board, and that's really why we decided to switch over. So it's open source as well, and it's a relationship database. And so the intent of switching over was that we wanted to be extensible, we wanted it to be robust, and there are certain improvements that I have here listed on the screen that I wanted to walk through. So the foundation of SQL is the standards. We wanted to endorse data integrity, and that's something that comes with SQL standards. We wanted to be able to reliably give you data consistency. I know Lama is on the call. She was working on the reports, and there were always certain numbers that were inconsistent, or maybe they weren't pulling the right data. I know Feneth had that same issue, and now with this switch that we had in 2.6.0, you won't be having those same issues. The way Solar works, and I'm trying not to over explain, but essentially it's taking a snapshot of your data, and when it does that snapshot, it results in inconsistencies. SQL doesn't do that. So now whenever you're pulling your reports, you're going to consistently have the correct numbers. The other exciting part of having SQL is that we're going to be able to join aggregations and calculations in a structured way. So one thing I'm going to show you is how we're going to be able to report on dates and date time fields within the system. And then now we're also able to have more flexibility in querying. We're able to have better performance. One of the things that you guys probably saw was Solar was crashing in different ways when you're pulling too much data. And now I'm still going to give you parameters around the types of reports that Primero can handle, but it's going to be able to be a lot higher performance because we're using a distributed data workload. And this is going to be able to break up large tables into smaller ones and make it more manageable for the database. The other things that really are important in this case is the ability to index. So when I talk about Solar taking a snapshot, in this case, SQL doesn't do that. And so you're able to re-index through PostgreSQL so that it's able to give you that data consistency. The last couple of things is Postgres is really good for JSON support. Solar was as well. But this is just something that we wanted to ensure that was there. And then, of course, with the SQL standards, there's always security enhancements to protect the data that's stored within the database. So what does this all mean for you? We wanted to make better reports for you. So like I mentioned, we're able to now do reporting based on dates and date time fields. And I'm going to show you that in just a minute on the actual interface of Primero. And we also want to make sure that it's not going to cause any errors when you are doing those reports. So these enhanced indexing is going to ensure that you're going to have more reliability in your reports and in your insights. Insights is a new feature that's going to be coming out more publicly in a few releases. But I'm just going to just say that for now. But right now it's for the reports. You're going to have less timeout errors. So this is really great for the end users who were reporting issues where their screens are timing out when you as system administrators were working on things for your reporting. We wanted to ensure that this is going to adhere to global standards. And one of the things that may not be really important for you, but was really important for the Primero team, is that Microsoft manages PostgreSQL. So Solar was being managed by Primero. So the Primero team was managing the releases, ensuring that it was kept up to date, and upgrading that consistently takes a lot of resources from our technical team. So not only are we trying to ensure everything is working from new features and functionality, we have all of this extra work to ensure that the infrastructure is running as it should be, and we're constantly upgrading it. So now with PostgreSQL, this is being upgraded and managed by Microsoft. So this is a lot more of a load off of the Primero team that we have to invest in consistently. The other things that come with Microsoft managing this is heightened security. Now, especially when we are doing aggregate anonymized data for large sensitive amounts of data, we wanted to ensure that that's a foundation of our reports. And with that, that's kind of where we are right now. But what this will intend in the future for Primero is now as we're switching over to PostgreSQL in our databases, this will also help us enhance our dashboards, our filters, and then we will also do these enhancements for our searches for tracing requests. So as I mentioned, Solar was really good for that fuzzy matching, and PostgreSQL is a lot more looking for exact matches. And so there's going to be a lot of work on our side to make it so PostgreSQL is going to be useful for family tracing and reunification. So these are going to be new features that come out in upcoming releases. So with that, I'm just going to quickly switch over to our Primero interface and just show you what this looks like in our just dummy environment. So for those of you who are not familiar with the reporting section, I just clicked on reports here in the left navigation. As a system administrator, you should have access to this. And if you don't, please let me know. And I've created a registration report. Within this report, on the top, you have your graphical information, but here, now you're able to break your information down by dates. So in this graph, I'm showing registrations broken down by gender, broken down by age, but also broken down by the dates that they were registered in. And here, the system will automatically calculate the weeks that the registrations happened in. I'm going to go ahead and edit this report just to show you how you can modify this. Under the date ranges, you're able to modify this to month or by day or by year. So if I switch this to month and I hit save, You can now see that the weekly intervals that you were seeing before are now broken down by month. Or if I go back to this, I can also change it by year. So if you're looking at more trend data or things like that, this might be helpful. The other thing that I just want to highlight, because you may not be able to see the date ranges, is you need to ensure that there's a date in one of your variables. So I have date of registration here, which is why I'm able to use the date ranges option. The other thing that I have in here are ages. And if I include age, then you can use age ranges checkbox. And that's the reason why, if I didn't have this checked and I hit save, now you can see my my age ranges are kind of all over the place. So there's 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 13 and 15. But if I go ahead and go to age ranges and hit save, this now changes it to 0 to 5, 6 to 11, and makes it a little bit more neater as you're doing your analysis. I know previously we were asking people to also just add reports. So Robert was mentioning this before, especially when you have a large caseload, such as in Lebanon or in Jordan and things like that, you still do want to add filters. This will help in reducing the utilization that you have on the database and just ensure that things are operating at a better performance. So what you can do is, if I was only going to look at date of registration for a specific time period, then maybe I can say after maybe January 1st, you can always add multiple reports and hit save. They are added here at the bottom, and you can remove any of your filters. And then this reduces the data that you're showing, and just you're looking at more specifically a time range that you need. I'm just going to stop sharing so I can see the chat and just to ask if there are any questions. Perfect. All right. I know that's a lot of information, and we're going to try and share more videos and things like that as the transition to PostgreSQL happens. If you have any specific reporting needs that you would like to ask questions about, please put them in the chat, and I'd be happy to answer them. Thanks.
Fantastic. Jan is very good at describing highly technical things in an accessible way. So thank goodness for that. I do have a question, and I wonder if any of you out there work directly with creating reports and going back and checking reports and modifying them over time. In your list of reports, do you have reports that you continuously edit or make changes to through the administrative console to accommodate different date ranges and periods of time? And if you do, what would be interesting for us is to understand if some of those reports are from before this change. If you created that same general report, but with the new date functionality implemented, how is that responding for you? And eventually what we would like to do is phase out the old reports that you have saved if they were based on the way Solar worked, if you understand what I mean. If you've been using the CPIMS for years and you have a set of reports that every month you're going to and you're running those reports again, it would be interesting for us to know any of those that are trying to capture intervals or periods, durations of time, if this new functionality is serving the purpose. Like we in our testing, it certainly works. We would love to hear from you if it's also making an impact for you.
There's one question in the chat about from Abid about difficulties for developing a dashboard that we prepare using Tableau or Power BI for every instance. So I'm not a Power BI expert. I've just kind of learned as I went, just like I think Ali and everyone else on this call. But I would say it's more the time investment in trying to understand what's useful for every instance. No configuration is the same. And every child protection program has different needs and that each partner is reporting on. And so creating a standardized dashboard for every instance it's not really fit for purpose. So I think the main thing about, so a system integrated dashboard is like trying to understand how these requirements are different. I think being able, what I think I would be useful maybe is being able to give you guys a template that you could plug into. And I think that's what the basis of that link that Robert shared earlier is how do you utilize the API to be able to build this yourself, because you know your requirements better than we do. But that's something that we can look at, is just giving you a outline and then you're able to modify those yourselves. My personal experience of creating a Power BI or Tableau dash, just even for our Primero analytics, it just took me like a couple days just to like build out something that looks nice and functions wanted. But I think it would take a lot of time to make it fit for purpose for each instance. And so really we want you as system administrators to drive that forward, since you know the programs better than we do. Some of the reports and demo can be modified. Yeah, so a lot of the reports, right when you're getting Primero out of the box, right when we set up your fresh Primero implementation, we have baked in some reports. These were developed by the CPIMS steering committee, I guess now ages ago, and we also always ensure that they're in every deployment because they're just baseline reports that we think are useful. If you don't find them useful, you don't have to look at them and you can just ignore them. But if you really don't want to see them in your instance, just let me know. And we can also remove those from your implementation. And just as Ali says in the chat, and I'm also going to put this in there's a step-by-step instruction. You are able to edit those reports yourself by putting a backslash and then edit in the URL. So then you're able to modify any of those variables and then make it so it's actually fit for you.
Okay, I'm a little wary of our time here because we only have about 20 minutes left. Keep the questions coming. The question about the seeded reports, the reports that come with the baseline configuration. Yeah, we want to have more regular feedback from you on that. We also want to be able to eventually gather the quarterly KPIs from you using that interface so that you don't have to fill in a web form every 3 months. Jan, I just saw a finesse message. You want to come in on that?
Yeah, no, just to say that's exactly it, Finette. You'll be able to do caseworker by province. You'll be able to do locations, graphs, that's no problem. I just want to also reiterate, because I've said this in Skype and I say this to you guys in emails, there's a new label called incomplete data. If a case exists, but that field was never filled out, that like, let's just say the location of the child in the care arrangements form is not filled out because it's not a mandatory field, then it's not going to be obviously counted in the graph. So it goes into a column called incomplete data. So you're just needing to follow up with the caseworkers to ensure that they're actually completing those case records, so you're able to generate those reports and make them as robust as you need. Sorry, and then I wasn't totally sure about Abid's question, Robert. I don't know if you maybe interpret it better than I do, but it's not worked for every report.
That ability to set the edit, to change the URL. I mean, that the whole point of having, all of you will recognize those little, in V2, the little key that you see beside specific fields in the form configuration module. These are hardened fields, and they're hardened because other things in the system depend on them being a specific way. And if the administrator is making changes to things, one of the main problems we had in Primero version 1 is that the ability to make configuration changes often meant that system administrators were changing underlying configuration choices that impacted reports or impacted other things. And so now a number of those fields are locked. And some of those seeded reports draw on the fields that are in fact locked. You can make some changes to some things, but you can't, for example, remove those. Just like you can't remove the record information details. So some of the hardening that we do is based on that if you make a change to a specific field, you could have a negative impact on other functionality. I think that's kind of in response to Abid's comment there. How about using reports that require values from 2 record types? Will we be able to do this in Power BI?
Yeah, so this is a little bit more complicated because we will need to kind of create a link if you're doing a case and an incident and trying to link them. I'm happy to kind of help walk through this with you, Miriam, if you're looking for something specific, just so we can ensure that there's an a link or an ID or something like that to make sure it's counted properly. But you will be able to do this type of thing in Power BI. It's just a matter of manipulating your variables and ensuring that there is common variables between the 2 record types, but that should be possible.
I think this speaks to what Ali was talking about with some of the advantages that you have of being able to split things differently, combine things in different ways. So for example, right now, you could not do that using the API. Right now, you could not, that's not possible, that you could combine different data types through the API. You would have to do this as a custom export, and you would have to manually align the data using a unique field, a unique identifier to make sure that would work. But yeah, you've seen what's possible with the Iraq team. So, with time and thought, I like the fact that Ali spent time to explain that the smart thing to do is to think about what you want to do before you start, because otherwise you could be just kind of thrashing around in the data for a long time and not getting the outcome that you're looking for. So yeah, start small, start discrete with a very clear idea of what you want, what relationship you want to represent, and then build your skill. I am going to move us along because it's 1:45 and we've kept everybody around for almost 2 full hours now. So we do want to make sure, like we mentioned before. So thank you very much, Jan, for that presentation. I did what I normally do, and I asked Jan to present the complicated, the content of the meeting. Yeah, I want you to talk about the difference between Solar and SQL. It's meaningful, right? These are things that impact all of you, and we think that you should be a part of these decisions. So, as we go, we want this to be progressive learning, participatory, and contributing to these end goals that we've identified. Jan, I'm going to take back the screen, and I'm going to wrap us up. I don't want to end without talking a little bit about where we go next. I really appreciate that you've taken 2 hours out of your day to be with us, and we want to make sure that this continues to add value. So what are the main issues that we'd like to see addressed? I'm going to circulate another web form for you. It's very quick. You don't have to answer any questions you don't want to. But after this session and going forward, even with colleagues that maybe watch the video or perhaps use the website, what do you need? What are you seeing? There's often a disconnect between the global level and the field level, and we have to do what we can to maintain good communications with you. So what would you like to see? And this Primero Data Challenge microsite, the idea is to have these materials freely available so that you can go back to them, right? There's a lot of information. So maybe you don't have time this week or next week to dig into Power BI and how it works, but maybe you have some free time in a month. We want you to know where to come to and what's available to you. So, please use this, share it, make it available to other colleagues. If you have ideas for features, so for example, Miriam just suggested, this idea of being able to report on different data types through the same report. That's something that would require back-end work of the Primero team and investment in that. So let's talk about those things. If you have any ideas for the next edition in Q3, we're aiming for the end of late September so that we can fit 4 editions in the year. Early September is never a good time for us. It's a very intense period of work for us, but we would love to see you again in September. We would love to make sure that what we're presenting and what we're talking about is very useful and meaningful for you. So please do share your thoughts and suggestions and ideas. I am now going to switch off and share with you, make sure that I have a very wacky chat right now, but this is a very short web form to talk about, what's going well, what's not. There's some open text fields, feel whatever you want to add there. It's important to us to hear from you. If you want to be anonymous, you don't have to include your name. And if you want to provide us with critical feedback, we also are eager to hear about that. So that's a wrap. We will package all this information up and we'll put it on the that same Primero Data Challenge microsite. Please take part and bring your experience and knowledge to bear on the conversation. So if there's no other business, I'm going to wrap it up now. And I really want to say thank you to Nke, to Ali, Hadar, and Jan for participating, for all of you for joining and spending a couple hours with us today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
And one last thing, we'll have the Primero annual meeting this year in November, in mid-November. So mark your calendars. We'll be sending around information about that soon. Bye-bye.